Hello everyone, and welcome to this video, which is in our Great Engine Game series. I'm Grandmaster Matthew Sadler, and we're taking a final look at a game between Leela-rofChade and Rofchade in the TCEC Season 22 InfraFinal, and we're looking at Game 46, featuring a Polish defence, the opening that Tony Miles famously used to defeat Anatoly Karpov. Didn't go quite so well as that this time, but still a very interesting game. So after e4, the opening was a6, d4, b5, and here white has to decide what to play. There are many strong moves in actual fact. I looked through a book, a recent book about Michael Basman, and it featured a lot of analysis by various players, from the 1980s in this line, and yeah, there were a lot of mistakes, a lot of tactical mistakes. Stuff that sort of looked interesting in the 1980s is +5 or +6 in the modern world. Leela plays something pretty interesting actually. Just plays knight d2. Yeah, it's a bit of an odd move, but I mean, it always gets played eventually, to defend the pawn on e4, but you do wonder why it needs to be done immediately. But after e6 and then a4, attacking the pawn on b5 and b4. And, well, I mean, normally in this type of situation, black prefers a4, b4 to come later, because maybe at some moments you might prefer to play b takes a4, or even just leave the pawn hanging and counterattack against the centre. In this case, you can't really do that, so you have to react with b4 straight away, and that weakens some queenside squares. In particular, it gives a lovely square on c4 for a white knight. So Leela continued developing, and here played the subtle move queen e2. The idea being that black really wants to play c5 to counter against the pawn on d4. I mean, if you play d takes c5, bishop takes c5, we get some sort of Sicilian structure, Sicilian cam structure, which, would probably be a reasonable achievement. But what Leela wants to do is to meet queen e2, c5 with d5. And this is a really sharp move, a really sharp idea, because that pawn on d5 is going to be doomed. But Leela sees a pretty long tactical sequence where essentially, actually a lot of pieces are potentially hanging, but the tactics hang together. In actual fact, what happens is that black's position just gets looser and looser. So e takes d5 played. Yeah, I mean, you have to do it at some stage. E takes d5, queen e7. So the queen is kind of blocking the kingside pieces there, but we are threatening bishop takes d5. Now I think that Rofchade was looking at bishop e4 in its PV, but Leela from the start, and this is also Stockfish's move, just played the move knight e4. So I mean, a big threat, knight d6 check. Amazingly, black can just play bishop takes d5, and this is absolutely nothing. Feels scary, and I know that as a human player you'd stare at this a few times, and even in the course of thinking you might go back to it a couple of times, just because you think, am I missing something stupid, am I missing something simple? But no, it's just nothing at all. But Leela has a different idea, which is this move bishop f, bishop g5. So if knight f6, I would just have bishop takes f6. This is already very annoying. The pin, you can't take it, and I'm just playing knight takes d5 afterwards. So f6 played. Yeah, again, another difficulty in development to add to the bishop on f8, which is blocked in by the queen on e7. And then the move bishop f4. And essentially, white's just keeping all the threats in the position. Bishop d6 might come in, knight d6 check is possible as well, and well, if you give white free rein, I mean, castle queenside is coming in. So black played the move queen e6, and now this is where it's really important to understand the tactics properly, because and it reminded me a little bit of these 1980s, because I'm sure in 1980s analysis, if you'd reached this far, you would have said, and the threat of c4 trapping the bishop on d3 means that white is unable to carry on his initiative. That's the sort of thing. But well, yeah, in the engine world these things have to be checked, and knight f3 is in fact possible here. So what is the problem? Well, if you go c4 here, we've got this very strong move knight d4. c takes d3 and just c takes d3. And of course, you know, the queen can't move away from here because we've got some deadly discovered checks. So so black has to go queen e7, but then we played bishop d6, and this is just winning the queen, because after queen f7 we've got knight g5 check, for example, quite apart from anything else mating that there might be around the place. So yeah, this move c4 is not possible, and it just means that, you know, in the meantime white's threatening to go castles, rook e1, and yeah, I mean, this king is in horrific problems here. So well, black plays very sharply, g5, hitting the bishop on f4, bishop g3, pardon me, c4 again is met by knight d4, hasn't helped at all. So g4 played, knight fd2, and then f5, and this is really pretty Basmanic, isn't it, really? You know, the b and the g pawns being thrown forward here. Lots of holes in the black position, but yeah, you know, black also active. It's you know, again, in a human game, certainly if you're not expecting this at all, yeah, I mean, the positions are pretty non-standard, and you know, very easy to get confused and to end up yeah, taking stuff, but somehow, you know, getting your own position wrecked at the same time. And actually, the way that Leela navigates this is very, very impressive. Now, apparently on CDB, on chessdatabase.cn, bishop e5 was the main move, which is quite clever. Queen takes e5 allows knight f6 check, picking up the queen. Very nice tactic. So black plays f takes e4, bishop takes e4, and you know, we're still threatening bishop takes h8. So bishop e4, knight e4. Still threatening bishop h8, you can't block it. So we go queen e5, knight f6 check, takes, and bishop e7. This is an interesting one. Stockfish won this one as white against Berserk. Berserk only drew it against Stockfish as white. Yeah, I mean, probably pretty good. I mean, you've got two knights and a bishop. Two bishops and a knight is always quite nice. Those two bishops work very well together. You know, two knights when the position is quite open can be quite hard to keep everything together. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't like it half as much as Leela's choice, really, which is more positional. Just knight d6 check, takes. So we've picked up the two bishops, and I mean, black's big problem is that its position is so loose. So we've got a loose pawn on c5, the f5 pawn. I mean, we've even got moves like bishop takes f5, exploiting the pin on the e file. And after that, you know, lots and lots of squares. I mean, you know, the dark squares are weak, the light squares are sensitive. You know, we've got all sorts of undermining moves as well against the black pawn chain. You know, it's going to be difficult to keep it together. But, you know, on the other hand, and the way that, you know, a player like Michael Basman, who played these sort of systems as black, or, you know, someone like John Spielman, when they get these sort of crazy positions, you know, they always sort of very much in your face. You know, they keep on coming and you know, put the pressure on you. But yeah, hard to do against an engine, only good against panicky humans. So king f7 played, and now Leela played a move that really was not the choice of any other engines. Actually, you've got to say that a lot of the moves that Leela played were, I think, underestimated by the other engines. It's just when you actually put the moves on the board and let them play out a game, then the evaluations are really, really high. But it wouldn't choose it just by itself. There are, however, a lot of decent possibilities. I mean, bishop takes c5 was one obvious thing, and here I like very much what Stockfish did, actually. Yeah, I mean, it was playing the move bishop takes g2, which is essentially just a wrecking action. You know, take that pawn on g2, wreck the kingside pawn structure. You know, even if white wins a pawn later, then, well, a wrecked pawn structure, isolated pawns, make it a bit more difficult to yeah, you know, to convert the position. And well, you know, if you look at what happened with you know, with Berserk here, castles, queen e2, bishop e2, bishop e6, rook d8, bishop a6, so a pawn goes there. But then you know, Stockfish starts counterattacking on the king side, and white's still better, but it, you know, it looks messy, you know, and I think that's the most really that you can achieve from this sort of position. Well, Leela plays much more calmly. So knight c4 played, not trying to get a pawn back, and after knight c6 simply castles. The one thing about this is that, yeah, you've got to be rather careful because all of your pieces are kind of can get under attack basically. But yeah, what Leela's looking for here is simply get the king castled, keep its king side intact. It's getting little threats like f3 takes g4 against the king, and then it's going to start trying to pick away at the black structure, starting with the pawn on c5. So queen e2 played, bishop e2, knight f6. And now another key Leela move, although, yeah, I mean, bishop c5 was what Stockfish was looking at, and it played it in a game against Berserk, and Berserk managed to hold this position, which surprises me a little bit. I mean, I'd really assess this as very, very good for white. 2 bishops, weak pawns everywhere, but somehow Berserk managed to hold this, which makes you think that this is, maybe not too bad. I guess, knight a5 is coming in, and it's difficult to avoid the exchange of one of white's bishops. Leela played the move knight b6 here. So hitting the rook on a8, also hitting the bishop on d5. Again, delaying, the capture of this pawn. That pawn will always be available. That's the idea. Rook he8, hitting the bishop on e2. Now, yeah, I mean, I think if you went rook a e8, then, Leela just wants to go bishop takes a6 and then start pushing this pawn. That's the idea. So rook h e8, leaving the knight on a8, attacked, but attacking the bishop on e2. Yeah, I mean, this would be a lot of compensation for black. So bishop d3 was played by Leela. And actually, if you look at what the hits that black has accumulated over the past few moves, it's quite substantial, right? I mean, this knight's attacking these two, this bishop's still attacking this pawn, and this bishop's attacking f5. The only question is that, yeah, black's got quite a lot of activity, so it's really going to be a thrust-counter-thrust kind of position. So black played c4, trying to distract white's pieces, but bishop f5, and I guess Leela's going for the harder target really, and trying to leave some easier targets for later. That's the basic idea. Knight d4 played, hitting the bishop on f5, and now knight takes d5. So if knight f5, I guess knight c7 comes back and forks these two, which I think I enjoyed that. I like that very much. And yeah, you've also got moves like bishop takes b4 as well coming in. So knight takes d5, knight takes d5, bishop g4. And yeah, what is this position? Well, amazingly, white's now pawn up. Yeah, he's been a pawn down for quite a while, but now a pawn up. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of pressure from all sorts of areas on the black position. Somehow Leela's playing with these bishops beautifully. I mean, this bishop's attacking this and also threatening this bishop h5 check move, which is rather annoying. Yeah, this bishop is eyeing this one. And yeah, I mean, this bishop is also sort of restraining the black rooks a little bit. Now, to stop this threat of bishop h5, black played knight f6, hitting the bishop with tempo. And then a very fine move here, actually, rook d1, hitting the knight on d4. So the knight takes on c2. I mean, the knight would take on c2, you have to move the rook anyway. But doing this first allows the bishop to return to f3. And now this is really very unpleasant for the rook on c8. Now, a very interesting thing happened here, actually. Namely that, in the ensuing moves, one of the big themes really was that yeah, Leela was well, either not taking exchanges or offering them to the opponent, and you'll see what I mean. But and of course, well, you could sort of argue, that with such amazing bishops, yeah, they're worth just as much as a rook, But it's quite, yeah, quite interesting somehow. So it was the first interesting line was rook c8, bishop b7, rook c6. So this was one black idea, just to give up the exchange but get a bit of freedom. But funnily enough, in this position, Leela's line was to play the move f4. Just giving the exchange back straight away with knight e3. But then after bishop takes b4, knight d1, something like rook d1, well, very nice position for white. Pawn up, split pawns. It's not 100% easy because black's quite active with moves like knight d5, but yeah, pretty good for white basically. But I thought that was quite interesting. I mean, really shocking when I saw it. Wow, f4. But it's a a good way. Basically, what white's trying to do there is to get a good spot on e5 for the bishop, and not not let black get enormous amounts of activity by bringing its pieces in. So that's actually that was the first interesting point there. RofChade played rook a7, but you see how dominated this rook is now by these two bishops. So this is working really well. But again, the plan for white is not at all obvious. And yeah, I mean, what Leela did in the next few moves was really nice. So first of all, a5. That's rook's pawn on one side, just stopping black from playing a5. So really keeping this rook pinned down. b3 played, just getting the pawn out of the attack of the knight. Maybe you're going to try for a later c3 and b2, you never know. Also just protecting the knight on c2, of course. And now h4, so rook's pawns on both sides. White's now just going to try and gain some space and actually try and get the pieces, maybe a little bit active in this way. Might even, just somehow, activate this way. Because, of course, the great thing about this knight on c2, which is now really entrenched there with a pawn on b3, is that it stops the rook coming to the e-file with rook e1. So h4, king g6 played. King h2, knight e4 from black. Oh, good lord, sorry. Knight e4 from black. Looking to play something like c3. So rook d5 from white. This is a really nice move. Just sort of getting ahead of a later c3, knight d2, and of course another incidental threat of bishop h5 attacking the rook on e8. And the rook's nicely mobile on the g file. On the fifth rank rather. It's not really going anywhere yet, but still, So after knight f6, there's plenty of good moves here. I mean, rook c5 is not so stupid just to go after the c4 pawn. But Leela's solution was absolutely beautiful, I have to say. It's h5 check, king f7, and then g4. g4, what a move. Just offering the exchange just like that. Just incredible. Again, I struggle to believe there that I would have thought of that move. And the idea is nothing amazing. The idea is just after takes check takes, you play king g3. Simply nothing. No amazing win or anything. But the point is, these bishops are incredibly strong. This rook can't move. And we're just looking for stuff like f4 and g5 and bishop e5 and all this stuff. And essentially black's got very little stuff that he can do. So, for example, rook a8 was one of my Stockfish Berserk games matches that I played. Bishop takes c4, attacking the pawn on b3, not even taking that exchange. Rook ac8, bishop takes b3, and we've got two bishops and two pawns, big, lovely kingside pawns there for the exchange. And after knight d4, bishop d5, rook e2, rook d1, knight e6, bishop a3. This, to be honest, is not as trivial for an engine for a human as it is for an engine, to be honest. There's a lot of specific tactics. For example, here we're not worried about the rooks being on the 7th because we attack the rook like that. I'm just thinking, actually, I think there were some clever ideas with takes, and then the move bishop b4, and this rook is kind of short of squares because rook b2, there's bishop c3 check, but yeah, I mean, this is just simply very strong for white, and yeah, Leela saw it as a clear win. Yeah, for me it just looks very strong, but yeah, I think you should probably trust Leela on that. So rook e6 was played, and now g5, knight d5, bishop d5. Rook a8 was played, offering the exchange. I mean, obviously not quite offering the exchange. Bishop a8 allows rook d6. But Leela just took on c4, and after rook c8 took on b3, so picked up two pawns there, and after knight d4 took the rook on e6. And as if by magic, after king takes e6, you look around, you count the pawns, and white is 2 pawns up. And Leela converted this very easily, in actual fact. Yeah, I mean, this is the always the nice thing about it, just the the accuracy that the engines have in doing this, and all these scary moves, that they're not scary. For example, knight f3, I can go rook e3 and rook takes f4, or I go king g3 and pick something up. These are things that I mean, as a human player, you often see the tactic very quickly, but you just end up wasting some time just making sure that you're not having a total brain melt, and missing something, because blunders are easy to make. But yeah, this works. Knight e6, bishop c1, and then f4 is coming in, f5, and the game didn't last much longer. I really love this game, actually. I mean, I love the very concrete approach. Sometimes Leela can play a little too actively in the opening and get some great activity, but throw away the advantage. But this was really spot on. And yeah, I mean, I appreciated very much, these little tactics, again, stuff that if it had been analysed in the 1980s, you would have been saying, amazingly, black is surviving. And then, you look at it in the modern computer age and it's completely refuted. But I thought what I really liked in particular was how calmly Leela played this, not trying to win back pawns quickly, but just keeping its position together, bringing its pieces into play and keeping its structure very very fluid there. And well, what you noticed is that somehow Leela's play sort of provoked ro-Chade into creating weaknesses, really, doing some enormous tactical stuff there, and Leela was spot on, all the way through with all these tactical moves, and I think that final idea, just after king f7, just the idea of g4, just really assessing so beautifully that 2 active bishops, a rook that's tied down, and a mobile majority, plus some weak queenside pawns, how that all fits together to make a big advantage. I mean, yeah, just find that really impressive. You see it a lot in the ancient games, but yeah, just remains impressive all the time. So there we are. That was the probably the final game I'll look at between Leela and ro-Chade. Very interesting match, very one-sided, of course. It was 21, wasn't it, in the end, the score? But yeah, I enjoyed very much, seeing how. Well, first of all, there were some beautiful games that Leela won, but also some really interesting defences. And yeah, I think you could learn a lot from defensive technique by analysing those games. So, but yeah, now it's time for the super final. So we'll see what Komodo can do against the mighty Stockfish. Going to be a toughie, I think, but you never know. Let's hope for some. Yeah, even if the match isn't really close, let's hope for some fantastic games. If you like this video, why not do a little like or a subscribe, or even take a look at my new book, The Silicon Road to Chess Improvement. And otherwise, well, keep watching this channel. We've got plenty more. Thanks very much for watching the video, and hope to see you again soon.